Welcome, everybody, to another episode of We All Agreed. I'm your host, Kay Rogers, and today I am joined by a very special guest, my sissy, Donna Cordes. I said it wrong, didn't I?
No, you said it right.
Okay, sweet. I never say your last name right, though. That's why I asked earlier. So, hi, Donna. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, Kay. How are you?
I'm great.
Thanks for having me today.
No problem. You seem super nervous. Are you nervous, Donna?
No, I'm not nervous. No.
You are lying. Donna wanted to be on the show, and I asked her to come on the show. Her and I are, like I said, brother and sister, and we both unfortunately share the same tragedy in our life where she had recently lost her son, and his name was Spencer. Well, not was, is Spencer, and he was a pretty incredible, amazing kid. A little bit of a knucklehead, but he was a lot of fun while he was. So, Donna, if you want to kind of pick up how everything went, and I'll interject as I can, or as I got part of the story to share too, and we can just kind of talk about it if you want. Yeah,
sure. So Spencer was 27 when he passed away, so it was January 9th of 2018. He had struggled with addiction for some time, but towards the end of his life, he had really made some huge changes. He was doing much better. He just got the best paying job that he'd ever had. He was always a great father, but he was very family oriented and very concerned about being with his daughter and spending time with her and providing for her. So I had talked to him he had come over on Christmas that year, spent the night. We had a wonderful Christmas. I was so glad that he was able to come that Christmas. And then I talked to him kind of off and on after Christmas. January 8th, I had talked to him on my way home from work, and he was talking about his daughter's birthday party and some other things he called me that night then, because I told him the birthday party was that next weekend, and I wasn't sure there was some other things going on, so I wasn't 100% sure that I was going to be able to come. But, obviously after thinking about it, I obviously was going to come because I didn't want to miss Riley's birthday party. And so anyway, Spencer called me that night, and he was, kind of concerned as to whether or not I was going to go. And I reassured him that I was going to go no matter what. We'd figure out whatever the conflict was, but I was going to be at the birthday party. So I said, okay, well, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I love you. And we hung up the phone. And the next thing I know, I get a phone call from you at 6:30 in the morning. And you said, Donna, get out of bed. And I got out of bed. I said, what's going on? And you go, well, you said Spencer passed away. And I said, are you kidding me? Because, it's not something that you want to believe. And it's shocking. You don't fully comprehend what's being said. And you said, no, I'm not kidding. And I don't know if we talked too much after that. I remember I had screamed. I dropped the phone. Grant asked me what was wrong, and I told him. And then I went out and just sat in the kitchen, and Grant called my boss and told him what had happened. I did call Heather, and I called Sadie, and I think I called you back and told you to have them wait to take his body because the coroner was there.
Yep, you did.
And so my husband and I drove there, and it's about a 50-minute drive to Mom's.
Right.
Spencer was living with my mom. So when we got there, Sadie was standing outside crying. The coroner was there. The police were there. And I went inside, and I wanted to know what had happened. I also wanted to see him. And they said that something had caused him to, what do they call it when your lungs, his respiratory system, and he threw up and his respiratory system kind of shut down.
Yeah, I don't know what that's called, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah. And so but they did say that the coroner did say that I probably didn't want to see him like that. And so what had happened is my mother woke up because Spencer didn't get up for work. And so she went to knock on his bedroom door, and she opened it and she found him deceased and had called, the coroner. And I think she thought she had called me, but she called you, and then.
Well, I can, if you don't mind, I'll throw in a little bit there. So I woke up for work that morning, and it was about 5:30, I think 5 o'clock, whatever time it was. And I noticed that I had a message on my phone, which was weird, from Mom, right? I'm like, why is Mom calling me at 5 o'clock in the morning? And I listened to the message, and all she said, so I think Aunt Bonnie was already at the house when Mom had called me at 5. And all I heard Mom say was, "Oh, nobody's answering their phone. I can't get a hold of anybody." And then she hung up. It's like, what in the world? So I called Mom back. I had started driving, and I called Mom back. I said, "What is going on?" And that's when she told me that Spencer had passed. I said, "What are you talking about? What do you mean?" And she's like, "He's gone." I said, "Well, call the ambulance, Mom." And she's like, "They're already here. And the coroner's here, and the police are here." She goes, "I can't get a hold of your sister." I said, "Okay, I'll call her." And, obviously I did. And I said, "Hey, I told you what I said." And then I said, "You need to get to Mom's." And so then, obviously, that's not anything you want to hear when somebody's calling you on the phone, and I can tell you now that was the hardest phone call I've ever made in my life. And then I got to Mom's, and I was there, and you had called me then when you guys were on your way, and you had said, "Don't let them take him until I get there." I said, "That's no problem," and I told the coroner and I said, "You guys need to wait till my sister gets here." And they did. They were fine. They didn't argue at all. And then
they were very nice.
Yeah, I mean, and Sadie showed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it was a terrible situation, terrible scene. Then Sadie showed up, and then talked with her for a few minutes, and I don't think she went in the room either. I don't remember, but I think we told her not to. And when I had went and the police told me not to, they had told me to get out because they were in there doing their thing, whatever. And then so that's when you called in the meantime and said, "Hey, don't do that." So I told them no, and then that's when you got there. And then you had wanted to go in, and the coroner had told you shouldn't probably go in, and then you turned and asked me, and I said you probably don't want to. And I think honestly, Donna, that was probably the best thing for you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's not the last memory you want to have of someone.
No.
So,
No. And so that's where we kind of got not brought up, but that's kind of where it was from there. And then go ahead. I don't remember everything for you for the rest of the day, but.
So, after that, they loaded Spencer up into the body bag, and I was able to say goodbye to him outside of the body bag. And then, you're kind of in a state of shock. So then after that, I had to start determining what funeral home to take him to, start making the arrangements. It's all so much, as you know. It was just so unexpected, heartbreaking. And then you're full of emotions, you're in shock, and then you have to plan a funeral. And the worst part about it is his little girl just loved him and was devastated by this news. She was only 4, but she completely understood what was going on. She knew that she was not going to see her daddy anymore, and it was horrendous. So over the course of the day, we went to the funeral home, got arrangements made. I was anxious for them to get Spencer there so I could spend some time with him. And that took some time. I don't think we got to see him until the next day. Sadie and I went over to the funeral home. We got to see him and sit with him for a little bit.
When you were doing all this, Donna, did it all seem like just almost like it's so surreal, like a bad dream? You're just walking through, everything's just kind of floating around you and everything. You know what I mean?
Yes, totally it did. It just didn't.
Nothing seemed like it was real.
No.
It was almost like you're just almost in a dream state, and the worst dream you could ever have, right at the nightmare. And it's
Yeah.
like you're just living through this, and you're just walking through this day and doing all these things, just like because I remember the same thing. It's just like everything happens so fast. And then next thing you know, you're in here doing all these things, and you're trying to plan a funeral. You're trying to get a hold of a funeral home, and everything just seems so surreal. I remember that feeling for a long time. It's just, is this really happening almost type of a thing.
And right, exactly. And then wondering why and what happened, because, one of the things that the coroner asked me was, did Spencer ever talk about suicide? And he had, but not recently. But I knew from our conversation from the night before, he was talking about wanting to make sure I was going to be at Riley's birthday party, which I was. And then we talked about the following that Sunday, him and Grandma were going to go to Chuck E. Cheese's and wanted me to go with them to do that. So I knew that he was looking forward to this birthday party. And I just couldn't see him, doing that to his daughter.
He didn't do that. I know he didn't do that. And I think with Spencer, what happened was just some bad luck.
It was. So ultimately, so let me get back to the funeral. So
sorry.
No, that's okay. So we you go through all the hoops of getting, the funeral arrangements made, and it's not like planning a wedding, or something. I mean, you're devastated, you're emotional, and you're trying to figure out what's the right thing to do, and making sure that, you remember your loved one appropriately. So we ultimately decided that we had the visitation on a Friday night, and asked everyone to wear Bears attire. Grant and I had just bought Spencer a new Bears shirt for Christmas. So we put that on him, for his visitation, and his Bears hat. And we had a Bears blanket that my sister-in-law and brother-in-law had given us to put over the casket. So I think it was something that Spencer would have really enjoyed, because he was an avid Bears fan. He loved the Bears. So I felt like it was a good send-off in that way. And we had quite a few people come, lots of his friends from high school, friends that he'd met along the way. Spencer was a very personable young man, and he made a lot of friends.
There's a lot of friends of his that came through. A lot of them. Like you said, I mean, he was just such a likable kid, funny. That laugh he had, I always remember his laugh. He giggled. He almost giggled.
He did.
He just like,
yeah, he did. He had a great sense of humor. And, you could tell when he was in the thick of his addiction, when he wasn't doing so well, you could tell. But when he was doing better, he was back to being that happy, funny, person.
Yeah, you could see the personality shift for sure when, like you said, when he was in the thick of it and he was the worst. I think you could definitely tell that the addiction changed him. He wasn't in control anymore, right? Yeah. And it wasn't his personality. He was totally driven by that. And I think, unless you witness that firsthand, I don't think people really truly understand how powerful addiction is over people.
Exactly.
Especially when it comes to any sort of drugs or anything. I mean, it controls their entire life.
It does. And, you question, as a parent who has a child that's passed away like this and had addiction problems, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about him. And it's funny because that there were lots of good memories, but you always think about those things that maybe could I have done this differently? Why did I act that way? Maybe I should have done this. You always think about. It's kind of like when somebody says they're dying and their last their whole life flashes before their eyes, and like Dad, he was remembering that time that he beat Rocky or one up Kelly or somebody
was
for
Kelly,
crossing
yeah.
the road, or whatever. And he would felt bad about that. It's when you have a kid, maybe not everybody doesn't have the same experience, but I feel like there's a lot of guilt associated with, having a child that's had an addiction problem and then ultimately passes away. It's, you blame yourself, even though you know that, I know that I tried to help him.
Oh, you tried all the time. I mean, you did everything you could.
Yes. And sometimes it's just not enough, and I did he'd been in rehab a couple times. And I did try to get him back into rehab that fall. But he got this new job and was living with my mom. And he did seem like he was doing much better. But ultimately,
his head seemed like it was in a much different place than it had been before.
It was.
It was almost like Spencer had kind of, I don't know if I want to say grown up, but it's almost like he had kind of shifted his mindset to where he was starting to really take a lot of responsibility for his own life, and he wanted to do so much more for himself and for Riley, and he was really thinking about the future more so than he had ever thought before, I think. And I had really seen that change in him. And kind of to your point you were talking about earlier about, like you always feel like, could I have done something different? I had that conversation with my counselor quite a few times when it come to Spencer, and I'd get so aggravated and upset with him because of the, just the whole situation, that, and we know, I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but you know what I'm talking about. And I told her, I said, maybe if I would have just taken a step back and thought about it a little bit more instead of knee-jerk reaction of being angry, and realize that maybe he just needed more help, and I've had a lot of, and her and I talked about that quite a bit, because it is upsetting, it's like, and I know he wasn't my son, but it's still, he was an integral part of everybody's lives in our family, and our family is a small family unit, and could I have taken a step back and done more to help him? I think the answer to that is yes. Had I realized maybe how bad truly it was, and I didn't honestly realize how bad it was, but I knew there was something there.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of them lessons that'll stick with me for the rest of my life is, don't need your reaction out of anger. Take a step back and just think about it for a minute. There, especially in Spencer's case, there was other driving forces.
I agree. And I totally agree with you. I mean, I didn't realize how bad it was either. I didn't realize I guess I didn't really want to face it, to think that, but the last part, like you said, though, he really was doing better. Yeah, I truly believe that. And
he was.
Ultimately, what came back from the coroner's office, it was hard that month waiting to get back that report from the coroner's office.
I remember you and I talked about that several times. It's like, God, it's taking so long. You wanted to know so much. Yes. And we all did.
Wanted some answers.
Yeah.
And ultimately what it was is that he had taken this supplement that you can buy from, I don't know if it's called a supplement. It's called Kratom. I think it's considered a supplement.
It's like a synthetic marijuana, I think, isn't it? Or something?
No, it's not. Kratom is something that I guess people take it to get over their addictions to opiates.
Oh, okay.
But people take it for other reasons too, for energy or whatever. So he had some of that kratom in his system. He had marijuana, which,
big deal.
And then he also had just a small amount of this anxiety medicine that he took. And somewhere in there, fentanyl. A small amount of fentanyl. Kratom contains something called mitragynine. I think I'm saying that right. So mitragynine and fentanyl combination are fatal, and that's what was the cause of death.
So the kratom that he was taking had been laced with fentanyl.
I believe that. The police were investigating. I've called a number of times over the past almost now 3 years and never get a call back. They did tell me when I talked to them initially, the first time I called to get a status, they said that it was a lower priority death investigation, which kind of doesn't set well with me. But so I have, and they keep me posted, and I've never heard another word from them. I've called over and over and over.
But there's been, I think around that time, though, there was a string of news stories that had come out about where there was multiple deaths that had been related to that, where stuff had been laced with fentanyl.
Yeah, yes. And it's weird that they just didn't really want to, it almost felt like they didn't want to, they wanted to kind of cover up the kratom thing or something. I don't know, because I know there's a lot of families. I belong to a Facebook page. There's a lot of families who have lost relatives, loved ones to kratom use just alone. But if it's combined with the wrong thing, it can be fatal. So, I mean, ultimately for me, I wanted to just know for sure where if that kratom was laced with fentanyl, because he bought that from a store a local store, a smoke shop, So, to prevent other people from dying or whatever, so I don't know. Ultimately, I don't have all the answers. Like I said, the state police never called me back. The one nice thing that happened is that the police gave me back his phone. And I was able to look at his search history, and I found that he was looking to go to college for accounting. He had gone off and on to school, never finished.
And Spencer's a smart kid.
Very smart. So he was looking at improving his life. He was looking at going to college for accounting. So I knew that he had future plans. I knew that it wasn't suicide. Not that, it just, you feel guilt, and it's hard and it's heartbreaking, and you grieve all the time, but if it was suicide, that would have been a whole nother level of guilt and grief,
Yeah. Even with his addiction that he had going on, I think he was, I don't know. He was on the other side of it, it seemed, because his mind, his personality, mm-hmm. He had talked about goals, which is something he didn't really do very much beforehand. Mm-hmm. And he is really focusing on the future. So I know it wasn't suicide. He did not do, this was not something that he did on purpose. This was just, and I hate to say it this way, but it was bad luck. That fatal combination was not anything he planned. That is not anything he had in his mind. When he took that stuff, he didn't think about that.
He had no idea. And I know that, I totally agree with you. I know he didn't want to die. I know that if, that's what makes I feel bad, because I know that he wouldn't have wanted it to be this way. He wanted to be with his daughter.
No.
And
he had a zest for life. Even when he was in his addiction, you could still see that he had this zest for life. There was parts of it that he still really enjoyed.
And he was a fighter. He got out, he pulled himself up again, and he was doing better. And I had because I felt like I never really got to say goodbye, the way that I wanted to, because after they take him in the body bag, then, they embalm them, and then ultimately he was cremated. But, when somebody's embalmed, you can't really hug them.
Right.
Right. And they say, that your loved ones will come to you at some point after death. And I didn't know, whether that would happen or not. I hoped it would. I held on to that. And I would say probably a month or so after he passed away, I had a dream that I was in a crowd of people, and somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and it was Spencer. And I said, "Oh, my Spencer." And he gave me the biggest hug, and I do believe that, he did that. I think that he was letting me know that he loved me and hugged me, and, and just a way to let me know he was okay.
And it felt very real the next morning when you woke up, didn't it?
It did. Yes, it did.
You could almost feel that hug.
Yeah, it felt good. It really did. Even almost 3 years later, I still think about him multiple times a day. It's just something I think, like you said, you never really get, you never really get over it. It never goes away.
No, you learn to live with it. It's all you do.
Yeah. And, little things, I'll find my mind wondering, something will remind me of something, and I find my mind wondering, different memories and things. And, the hardest part, I think, everything was hard, but I think one of the harder aspects of it was Riley. Poor Riley. Her mother took her to the funeral. We had talked about it and thought it was best for her to be able to say goodbye.
Right.
And she cried and cried and cried and yelled for Daddy. And it was heart-wrenching. She couldn't sleep for some time. She had to have a picture of him with her, and that little pamphlet from the service, had his picture on it. And it took, even for being a kid and 4 years old, it took some time for her to be able to, probably over a year, where if she'd see his pictures, she wouldn't start crying, And I don't think she's forgotten about him, but
no.
She
still talks about him.
Resilient. It's more, kids are more resilient than,
Yeah, their emotions are always more pure than adults.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have all the, I don't know what you want to call it, as we grow older and get more mature, I guess, I think we sometimes take away from our emotional, the way we feel emotionally. We're kids, it's very pure, right? They don't have all the, I don't know, corruptions or whatever that you live through life, and all the ways that things change you,
Yeah.
I know I had that kind of same dream with Nicholas after he had passed, and it was a while. It was probably about a year, and kind of a similar situation. I was standing, I don't even know where I was standing. I was just standing somewhere, and I was watching these kids run. Just a bunch of kids were running. And then one of them ran right up to me and grabbed me by the face and said, "Dad, it's going to be okay." And it was Nicholas. So they do come to you.
Yeah.
But there isn't a day that goes by I don't think about Nick. It's been 10 and a half years, You'll never stop thinking about him. That's why I talk about him so much, In my interviews with a couple different people, I've told them I do like the advocacy work for the Gift of Hope, the organ donations, because I'm selfish. I do it because I get to talk about my son,
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. People, like on Facebook, I like to share memories of Spencer.
You should.
Because, or even write on his Facebook page, not because it makes me feel better. I think he would have liked that. And I want his memory to continue.
To pick it back up, we were talking about how we'd never stop thinking about him. There's always, even today for me, like I said, it's been 10 and a half years, and it's every day I think of Nicholas.
Yeah.
Every day. And you were talking about posting on Spencer's Facebook page. I think a lot of people mistake the intent of that. I think people think that's like a cry for help. And a lot of times
or pity or something.
But
yeah.
like you said, it's not. It just makes you feel good.
It's like, when you go to a therapist, they tell you to keep a diary, to write down your feelings, It's kind of the same thing. It's therapeutic. It's helpful. I know that Spencer would love that if he were alive. He'd love it that I was writing things on his Facebook page and remembering him, and I don't ever want his name to be forgotten or who he was to be forgotten. I want to keep his memory alive. Like you want to keep Nick's memory
of course.
alive.
And you've got, and his daughter deserves that.
Yes.
Riley deserves that. She wants his memory alive. And even though she was 4, and there'll be a time when she gets older, she'll just have those few memories of her dad, and she'd lived a lifetime, but at least his memory is still alive, and she has that opportunity to go back and look at his Facebook page and
yes.
and all those different things. I'm assuming Facebook will be around for the next 20 years or
right.
more. But
yeah. Well, and I don't want to. I guess I should mention Bree, my other granddaughter. Bree was not Spencer's biological daughter, but he had been in her life. We'd all been in her life since she was 4 years old, and I always treated her like my granddaughter. He treated her like another daughter, and she too. With Riley was devastated because he was the only dad she knew, so it really was an impact on both the girls. So we I do have some clothes, dispensers, and so forth. At some point, I'm going to have, a couple quilts made for the girls.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah.
Or pillows or something along those lines. And we have, the pictures and things like that. So, because I think it is important for the kids to be, it's hard on, especially the older kids too, Bree had a rough time with it too.
Yeah, and I remember, they both were there, and you could tell, obviously it was more obvious with Riley, but you could tell Bree was definitely feeling it, no doubt. And, she's a little older, so she reacted a little differently,
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's going to handle things differently. That's pretty normal.
Yeah.
I know, Pam grieved differently and handled it differently than I did when Nick died, and all the kids handled it differently. So that's normal, but that doesn't take away. The point of that is it doesn't take away from the way they feel it, right? It doesn't mean they don't feel it any less. It's just they handle that grief and that feeling differently.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And so I was lucky enough after that happened. Pekin Insurance is where I'd worked. And they were wonderful. They were, a smaller business, family oriented. They gave me 2 weeks off with pay. I wasn't ready to come back after 1 week, and I was going to take family leave or use my vacation time. My boss said, no, just take another week. And even after that, when I went back to work, I still was not mentally strong enough to go back to the daily routine. So I was able to work, half day in the morning and then go home and work the rest of the day from home, where I could just cry if I wanted to, take a break, whatever. And it took really probably close to a year for me to get back to where I could function right. At least, strong enough to be at work and not cry and not all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I went back to work after a month, and I wasn't ready, but I faked it the best that I could. But eventually it did cost me that job because they had to fire me.
Yeah.
Because I'd had a couple safety violations, which they were right for doing. My
Your
head,
mind just wasn't.
It wasn't right, and I think they knew that, but they had no choice. And like I said, I don't have any ill will towards them at all. It was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to eventually get somebody hurt, and they, as much as they, and I think I was stubborn and probably wasn't seeking help like I should have, and so, it cost me a job, it was a good paying job, now everything's turned out, for the best over time, but it was the better part of a year. I think it was even a little bit longer for me to where I would say I was functioning at the level that I felt I should have been.
Yeah. And I agree. And, I think for me, after a year, at least I was able to function, not at the total level that I should be, or I've never went back to normal, but I know that then, you kind of gradually things change. So I was also very angry for a long time. I pushed people away. I didn't really find any joy in anything anymore. I love my daughter. I love Riley and Bree, my husband, stepkids. I love everybody, but it just kind of takes that you don't have that happiness anymore. Eventually it gets better and starts coming back, I would say the last couple months are the best I've felt since this happened,
Yeah, I think it took a long time to not feel guilty, to feel good again, if that makes any sense. Like, to your point of where you didn't find happiness in anything. And I think for me, part of the reason that I wasn't finding any happiness or not, and it wasn't that it wasn't there, right? I felt guilty if I felt happy, because I think the way I thought was, how could I possibly feel happy after going through this?
Exactly.
What?
Or laugh and smile,
Yeah, I can't, I can't. And then I remembered that dream I had, and Nicholas said it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I started to realize it is going to be okay. I'm supposed to keep living, right? And part of living is feeling good again. And not that takes away from the loss that you feel, because it doesn't. I think it changes the way that we carry that loss.
Yeah.
Because to your point earlier, it doesn't ever go away. You don't just get past that, but you do learn how to keep living, even though you carry it with you. You learn how to carry it and continue to be happy. And I think we find a way to keep including that in our happiness as we go forward.
Yeah.
We still include them, even though they're not here. We still include them in our family, in our lives, in our happiness, whether we show it outwardly or not. I think we do somehow, spiritually or emotionally or whatever it is that we do. We still find a way to include them because they're still a big part of your life.
Yes.
And they always will be.
And I agree. And, a death like that, and I think Sadie would agree too, because I know she's been emotionally distraught over that as well. She's grieved Joe and Trish. They're his step siblings. That was a hard
that was really
pill
hard
to swallow for them as well. And but things do improve over time. It's never the same, but that the loved one would want you to be happy, and you have to keep going, and it just takes time.
Yeah, and a lot of it.
Right, a lot of time. And like you said, I still think about Spencer multiple times a day. I still miss him. I still have that same pain in my chest because I wish he was here. But I've gotten, I've adjusted. I mean, I think the other thing that's happened is I find myself trying to be a better person, trying to be just maybe more patient, more understanding, towards other people.
Well, I think I think there's some things that you have to learn to accept, right? Mm-hmm. Now, everybody has their faults, and including myself. I know, hard to believe.
Oh, no way, Kate. No way.
What?
Shocker.
But I do find myself at least trying. I'm not always successful.
Yeah, right.
But I do try just to say, some people are different. That's okay. I don't need to judge them because that's not maybe what I would do.
Right.
But maybe people look at me and say, you know what? I wouldn't do what he's doing, and maybe they pass judgment over me, and I wouldn't like that. So why would I do that to other people, right? So to your point, I do find myself trying to be more patient, more understanding, less judgmental. And I think being that way more helps you have healthier, stronger relationships too.
Yes, I agree.
There are some things you just have to accept, and they don't impact you, so why would you care about them?
Well, and carrying anger around doesn't make you happy.
No, it's very unhealthy.
And it's stressful, and I think that's an important step in getting better when you've had a loss, is letting go of that anger and acceptance of what has happened. That helps you deal with it better,
Yeah, because you have to accept it, because there is no going. You can't go back and change it. Mm-hmm. It's happened whether you want it to or not. I know in the beginning when Nick had passed, I accepted the fact that I wasn't going to know why. Mm-hmm. And I knew why medically, but and I've said this before, it's more of that whole spiritual, the whole universal thing. Why did this happen? Right. Mm-hmm. And I accepted that I just don't know, and I'm not gonna, and there's no way I'm going to find out until it's my time to go. And then at that point, then I'll know why.
Yes.
Right. And I think for me, for my own mental health, that helped me a lot. Mm-hmm. The other thing that helped me more than anything, I think, was doing the Gift of Hope advocacy work. That gave me
makes you feel good.
Yeah, it gave me an outlet to talk about Nicholas, to share stories about Nicholas, to meet other people like me, but also to meet people that were impacted in a positive way from a tragedy where they got that, that life-saving gift, the organ that they needed. And so that helped me a ton. because I think if I wouldn't have had that outlet, that positive outlet, because there's all kinds of ways to get outlets, right? Drinking is an outlet, doing drugs is an outlet, poor behavior is an outlet.
Right.
That was a positive outlet that I found that I could do that made me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Because booze sure didn't, and boy, did I drink a lot.
I remember when, you, unless, it's not a club anybody wants to belong to,
No.
because the feeling, and it's torture. It is absolute torture to lose a child.
Oh, it's misery.
Horrendous.
It's you can't even describe it, because it hurts so bad and so deep and so different than anything else you've ever felt in your life.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost grandparents, we've lost parents, and that hurts, and it's painful, and it sucks.
But it's the natural cycle of things.
It's
right?
the natural order.
Order of things, exactly.
I was talking to somebody, I don't remember who it was, but anyway, I said, never in my life did I ever think growing up that Donna and I would share this.
No, never. Never, ever. This isn't something that I would want to share.
No.
No. I mean, and we never got to, and I know this is the same with Nick, and, never got to see them get married.
Nope.
Never got to see them go off to college or whatever, that, have their own house, have their own.
We didn't get to see them progress through life like they should have.
Exactly.
Like you should have been able to see them do. Right.
Yes.
There's so many firsts that just never got to happen. And, I drank so much for a while. It's bad, and I finally got to the point, I'm like, God, I just can't keep doing this either.
Doesn't make it better.
No, it made it worse.
Yeah.
And it turns you into a blubbering idiot, and it's just like, man. And then of course, the hangover the next day. And it's just like, this isn't helping anything. It's okay to do it and have some fun with some friends and family. And, as long as you're doing it for that, it's when you're doing it to try to medicate that pain. And the only thing that ever did was actually make the pain stronger, more pronounced, more acute, maybe. I don't know. To describe what it feels like to lose a child, you can't. There are no words. No.
I saw a picture on, or whatever a meme or whatever they call it on Facebook, and it showed up like a statue, and there's a great big hole in the middle. And that to me is just the perfect
that's called the grieving parent.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that too. Actually, I reached out to try to order one. I was actually going to get two, one for you and I, and I wasn't able to get a hold of anybody to try to figure out where to get that at. But yeah, that's exactly what that is. That's called the grieving parent. It's beautiful. It really captures how it feels.
Yeah. I mean, I can see why, some people don't recover.
No.
They don't recover, and their life is ruined.
There are some people out there that just, for no lack of a better way to say it, they die along with them. They're just still living through life, but they don't have anything left for it.
And I guess in our case, if there's anything positive to look at, is that we have, lots of people who love us.
We do.
And, we have.
Mom loves me more.
You wish. And we have our the other children and grandchildren that we have to be strong for.
We do.
Have to make their life happy. And make good memories with them and for them.
And we do. And it's, and when you share that with them, because I know with like all my other kids, we talk about Nick frequently, it's never a taboo thing. I got to sneeze. Excuse
Bless
me.
you.
Thanks. It's never a taboo thing. We, we always tell stories, and I'm sure you and Sadie do the same thing.
Yes.
And I'm sure Riley asks questions, and you can tell her stories and stuff. And those are good times to me too, when you all can sit there and keep that, or when you and I talk about Spencer, and, we can share those stories, how funny things were. And like when he blew all that blueberry applesauce in my face.
When he was a baby.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah, he was such a fat little baby too.
He was the cutest little. I have this picture of him in kindergarten, and he had his blue jean shirt on and this big smile on
Oh,
his
yeah.
chubby cheeks. He had the cutest chubby cheeks. Riley looks a lot like Spencer.
She does. She looks like her dad.
Yes.
As our dad used to say, she's cut from his ass.
Right, exactly. Straight from, yeah.
Yeah, cut straight from his ass. That's what Dad used to say.
Yeah.
I got that picture from the shed, and it was a picture of Spencer, Andrew, and Nick.
Oh, after their bath. With
Yeah,
their
with the t-shirts on. And I gave that to Andrew. I thought, man, that was a really good picture. I bet Andrew really liked that. And that's when I asked you and Mom if you cared, and you didn't. So Andrew was really excited when I gave that to him.
Did he like it?
Yeah, he really liked that.
I know. Who would have thought, when you look at those pictures, that our small family unit, not talking about extended family and all of that, but if, from us growing up, we've lost our dad, you've lost Nick, I've lost Spencer.
Mm-hmm. Mom's all we got left.
Yeah, things
and Andrew and Sadie
change quickly, don't they?
They did. And actually, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he goes, after I heard that, he goes, then it dawned on me. He goes, it's you and your sister both. He goes, from the same family. He goes, that's hard. I said, yeah, it is.
It is very hard.
It is. And I tell you, when we stopped there this year, just not that long ago, actually, I did a little memorial ride on the motorcycle forum with my guys that we ride with. And we stopped at the cemetery, and I showed him Nick. And then I also talked about Spencer quite a bit and showed him Spencer. And then Dad's laid to rest there too. And I said, we got our own little grouping going on here. Yeah, a little family. We got Dad, Mom, and then Pam and I will be on one side eventually, and Christine and Marty will be on the other, because when Nick passed and we bought that plot, I bought the two on each side of it. So then we would all have the ability to be buried there by him, and and then Mom will be. So we'll have good company.
Yes, we'll all be together.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I don't mean that like I want this to happen tomorrow. I don't. But when my time comes, I'll be looking forward to it, be hanging out with them. I'm sure, knowing Spencer, knowing Nick, they're having a good time.
Yes, I'm sure they are.
Spencer was good with both of them. He was good with Andrew, he was good with Nick, and he had a lot of fun with them, And I know he had that memorial tattoo put on his arm after Nick passed, because I know that impacted Spencer pretty profoundly.
It did.
That was his little cousin. That was hard. That was hard for the whole family, And then after, when Spencer passed, that was just like, my God, again? Why? Why? How can this be?
Exactly. Why?
Yeah,
Why did this have to happen? I mean,
once was bad enough, but twice?
Exactly. And
it's just, I mean, if you really, to me, it just seems so incredibly unfair, but there's got to be a much bigger reason than I know right now.
Yes.
Because that's the only way I can explain that, why you and I have to be challenged like this.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know right now. Maybe someday when we go to heaven, we'll find out.
Yeah, and I don't know right now either. And we're not going to know.
Yeah.
I know when we did the service for him, it was hard, because I had to think about it in terms of, what can I say to her?
When we had the burial.
Yeah.
Because, so I guess I have to back up a little bit to say that we did have the visitation. I called it the funeral, but it wasn't the graveside funeral. It was the visitation. And then Spencer was cremated, and I kept the ashes. And I had a really hard time. I didn't want to give up the ashes. I wanted to keep them with me, just because I felt like, I can't explain it. I felt like he was there with me by having the ashes. Mm-hmm. So it took some time for me to think about having a burial and ordering a headstone and those kinds of things. But I did end up keeping a small amount, and we went ahead and scheduled the burial, and it was just a private family burial. And I asked you to say some words at the burial. So, and I know that was hard for you.
It was, but it was, but I was glad I was able to do it.
Yeah, I was too.
And that was what I was thinking. It's like, what can I say? Because there's nothing you can say that's going to take the pain away. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are no words out there that's going to make you feel any better. And I know a lot of people always try to come up with something so profound that it makes your pain go away. And it's just, I will tell you, there isn't
anything.
and not just in this, in any case, right?
Exactly.
You can't make pain go away just by words. You can offer condolences, you can offer empathy, and yeah, you may make them feel a little bit better, but the pain itself is just time, right? Mm-hmm. But that was, when I was doing that, I was thinking, what can I say to let her know that over time this will feel better? Not that this will feel better, but she will be okay and she will be better going forward. Not always feeling the way she feels right now. And that was really the thing that I was trying to get across when we did that ceremony. When I told you, Donna, it will be okay. Yeah. It wasn't that it's going to make anything feel better, but you will learn how to keep living and find enjoyment in life again. And it takes a while.
Yes.
Like you said, for you, it was over a year. And for me, it was over a year before I really got to the point where I just decided I didn't want to feel like that anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
I didn't know what I wanted to feel like. I didn't know where I was going, but I did know I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And I can tell you, I don't miss that. I don't.
Yeah. The initial grief is, everybody grieves differently. But for me, and for you, I know as well, it was almost unbearable. It was awful. It's just, yeah, it's hard to explain, but it was awful.
I mean, I know you and I, growing up, we had shared we had our fair share of pain and upsets and all that, but there's nothing compared to what that was.
No, those are trivial compared to losing a child.
And then if we share them with other people, they probably wouldn't think they're so trivial, but they really are compared to what we went through there with losing a child. Nothing in comparison.
No, nothing else matters after, something like that. It's just, but you did do a wonderful job at the graveside burial. And I appreciate that. You did an awesome job. And also, you were there for me when Spencer passed away and helped me get through all of that. And I appreciate that. I love you very much.
Well, I love you too, sis, but that's, that's what we're supposed to do.
Yes.
That's why we're brother and sister. Well, besides the fact that our parents had us.
Right.
But
we didn't really have a choice.
We didn't have a choice. I mean, if we could go back and maybe had a choice, but no.
Right.
Hey, what?
Right.
Mom, I'm still Mom's favorite. Anyway. But no, I mean, I knew I just wanted to offer some sort of help. I mean, I know I'd been through it earlier than you, and I knew where you were at in the very beginning, and I remembered that so vividly. And to be honest, losing Spencer did have a major impact on me.
Of course, yeah.
Obviously not to the degree of yourself, because it's different.
It is,
and I know that, but it still was very hard, and it set me back. It did. I was doing pretty good, I thought, and then that did set me back. And I thought I was still doing okay. I didn't realize the spiral downward that I was taking, and I finally had to just get my head clear. I took some time and got my head clear, and started doing some counseling again, and that I started kind of building my way back up, because I knew the direction I was going was not going to be a good one.
Right.
And I'm like, this isn't healthy for anyone. Right. And it's okay to feel the loss. It wasn't okay to just let my life kind of fall apart. So I had to get my head right again.
Yeah.
And I did. And I was glad I was able to be there to help you along the way too, because I think if nothing, at least I can give you that shoulder to lean on with somebody that understands.
And that's the thing. If you have never lost a child, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But you can't really understand,
no.
And that's what's so important about, like, your, what do they call it?
Like support structure, or
those that group of parents who have lost children. It's a grief organization. Can't think of what it's called now, but I need to remember it.
The local one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, what is the name of that? I went to
Compassionate Friends. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
It took a minute.
I joined I joined several of their Facebook pages, and being able to hear other people's stories in a weird way just kind of helps you realize you're not alone. Kind of what they experience, how they feel. It's very helpful. And then they had, a candle lighting ceremony around Christmas time to remember our loved ones. So it's helpful to be able, at least for me, it was helpful to belong to some of these groups like this to help me get through and to have some participation in recognizing the loved ones. I mean, all those kinds of things help you cope.
Yes, they do. Because I think it's good to know, and I don't know, maybe I'm saying this the wrong way, but I think it feels good to know you're not alone.
Yes.
In this aspect of things, there are other people out there that have gone through this and they are willing to reach out to help. And so I guess it lets you know that, there's a whole big bunch of people out there that have lost children and they're all doing okay. So why can't I do okay too? Right? I think it just makes you feel like being okay is okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And you can vent on those pages
Yes.
too if you're having a bad day, and the people understand, because they're all in the same boat.
Right.
So.
And they all deal with it, right? And they deal with it in different ways, and maybe they can offer you a suggestion that helps, right? I mean,
agree.
that's.
Yeah.
So backing up just a little bit, I thought there was one part I thought it would be important to talk about, and we haven't touched on it yet, was after he passed away, and then you were contacted by some people that wanted to share his story because somehow they were under the impression that he had passed away from heroin addiction.
Exactly, yeah. Which was a little, I guess what happens, and this happens a lot, there's rumors that go around, and, young adults, they all have Facebook, So there was a rumor that he had passed away from heroin addiction. And while I understand the cause and what they're doing, that isn't what happened, So I just told the person that contacted me that wasn't the case, and I didn't want his name. I think they were putting names on a T-shirt of people that died from heroin overdoses. And I like I said, I appreciate the cause. I understand what the point is, but Spencer did not die of a heroin overdose. That was one thing that, not that any addict is any better than another one. His addiction was different than that. It wasn't heroin.
Right. He had a different type of an addiction. His was, It was pills.
Yes.
Yeah, same thing that Andrew had been addicted to. He got addicted to Vicodin or something, whatever it was. But, and weren't you contacted multiple times though from different groups about that same thing?
I was, and then I was contacted to join the Parents Against Kratom group, which I do support and I believe in. I don't watch it so much anymore because it's just became kind of a constant reminder.
Is it an angry?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. And then I was contacted by pro-kratom people wanting me not to join the anti-kratom group. It was just, because there's people out there that are very supportive of kratom because they feel like it's very beneficial for people that have opiate addictions. And I'm not saying it's not. I just know that it's not FDA regulated. So you don't know what you're buying.
Right. It could be anything.
Yeah.
And in Spencer's case, it was.
Exactly. I mean, I think he didn't use fentanyl. I don't know where it came from. I really wanted to find out. And I'll continue calling the police the state police till the day I die to get an answer. So
they don't know your resolve, do they?
No, right? Eventually, somebody's going to have to talk to me, but I know they're extremely busy. Not to
and there's and we don't know that. And just for the record, we are not saying that the kratom was laced with fentanyl. We don't know.
That for sure.
All we know is
suspect that, but I don't know.
Right. All we know is that there was fentanyl that reacted with the drug that is in kratom, and that is what the lethal dose was.
Exactly.
So that's the part that we know for sure.
And it wasn't, and I just as a warning to everybody out there, it wasn't a large amount of kratom. It wasn't a large amount of fentanyl. It was, like I said, the mitragynine and the fentanyl in even a small amount is fatal. So
So it suppresses like your lungs and your
It
whole.
shuts everything down like gradually.
So it shuts all your organs down.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Or your respiratory system.
So your respiratory system, it shuts all that down.
Yes. They call it I forgot what they have a word for it, but
Respiratory rest maybe or something? I don't.
something along those lines. But the thing is, and I did actually an interview for, I think it was Channel 25 or 31 or something, just over the phone, shortly after Spencer's death, because it was important to me. I'm not saying I'm pro-kratom or anti-kratom, like we had talked.
Right.
It's more around that I feel like people need to be aware that all of these like synthetic marijuana, you can buy it from a smoke shop, kratom, any of those things. If it's not FDA regulated, you don't know what's in it. It's like it's the same as buying a drug off the street. You don't know what's in it,
right.
And you could get something that is laced with fentanyl or something else, and it could kill you. It could be fatal.
And maybe it's time to start regulating some of these things.
I agree. I know they've talked about it with kratom, but
I mean, if it's going to be so widespread available, why wouldn't you?
Right. Why would, I mean, to me, I don't think we should sell anything like that if it's not FDA regulated,
Right.
But I've had a death, I don't know. I'm sure there's people that say, well, I use it all the time. I've never had any problem. It just takes one time.
It seems like you're almost playing Russian roulette with that stuff.
Yes.
And not just anything that's not FDA regulated. You're playing Russian roulette because, to your point, you don't know what you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
You could be getting anything. You don't know what kind of fillers are being used. You don't know if actually that pill or whatever it is does what they say it's supposed to do. You don't even know that because it's not FDA regulated. It's not been tested. There's no proof that it does. I think the testing is when they put it out on the market and they let people take it and see what happens.
Yeah. And I, again, just to stress the point, there have been many people across the United States who have lost loved ones to kratom. So whether it's just taking kratom alone, combining it with something, whatever the case is, there's been a high number of deaths associated with it. I guess people can say it's probably like any other drug. You're right. Exactly. That's the point.
It is like any other drug, but any other drug that you buy has warnings, has been FDA tested. When you get a prescription, they'll tell you what you can or can't take that with, right?
I meant more like a street drug.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. People die all the time of using drugs they buy off the street. Right. Exactly. If it isn't FDA regulated, it's just, to me, it's almost the same thing.
Right. I mean, as simple as marijuana is, when you were buying marijuana off the street before it was legal and it wasn't regulated,
mm-hmm.
You could get it laced with anything. You didn't know it was in that. And a lot of times it had been. And it wasn't that the marijuana is the thing that's going to cause the problem. It's whatever it could have been laced with, right?
Yes.
And so now that marijuana is legal in Illinois and, the legal stuff is regulated, right? It has to pass certain things before it can be sold. So you can't just put anything in it. And that's the point.
Yeah, right.
You can't just put anything in it. So why would you want to buy something that you can?
Exactly. Well, and yeah, exactly. It's just, it was if we could turn back time, right?
Yeah. But we can't.
No.
The only thing we can do is try to make it positive.
Yes.
Somehow. Even if it's just this, having a conversation about it. Maybe somebody hears this and listens and says, that's a good point. And then they don't do it, right?
Yeah.
They don't buy something. That would be a positive to me, because to your point, I mean, anything like this could be avoided if it was managed and regulated better.
Yeah, I know that when he was taking it, he thought it was safe. He thought it was safe because you buy it from a smoke shop.
It's in a package. It's
in
sealed.
A package. Yeah.
It's safe, right? I mean, and I said this earlier in the interview. I know Spencer wasn't trying to hurt himself. I know that for I would take that I'd bet my life on that.
I agree with you. Like I said, based on my conversation with him that night and even the previous weekend at Christmas time, I mean, he was not in that place.
No.
I've seen him in that place before, but he wasn't in that place then.
No, he was not. He was really finding his footing in life.
He was.
And he was really getting excited about it. He finally felt like he had control.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell.
Yeah.
And he had got that job. It was the best paying job he'd ever have. And he was excited about that and all those things. So, yeah, I mean, he wasn't trying to do anything. He thought it was safe.
Right. Yeah.
But it turns out it wasn't. So, and that's the point of that whole conversation about why would you want something unregulated?
Exactly. Yeah.
We want to keep people, people need to be told what's in it. They need to be educated on what's in it. They need to understand what they're taking. Is it helpful or harmful? They have a right to know that.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And granted, people can say, well, they can just choose not to buy it. Well, that's true. We can choose not to do a lot of things, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't do what's right.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can't always just, yes, there is individual responsibility, and I firmly believe in that, but I also firmly believe if we're going to offer something to the masses, then as a society, as a whole, we have a responsibility to make sure it's as safe as it can be.
Like they do at any other, like the foods that we buy in the grocery store, they're, sealed for our protection.
And they still have recalls on them.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the point of that comment is the fact that is regulated. Right. To your point, it's sealed up. And sometimes things still happen, yes. Right? As regulated as it is. So why wouldn't we want to at least control? And so when those things do happen, what do? They recall it all. They pull it off the shelves, and they minimize the impact to people.
Yes. Right.
They can track down what part of it's the bad stuff, and they can get it off the market so nobody gets it. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't we do the same thing?
Exactly. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's just, I wish I had my son back. I miss him every day.
I know.
And it's different without him here. And not to, like I said, I love my daughter, my husband, my stepkids. And we have a lot of happy times to look forward to together. But it's just,
Yeah, I feel the same way. I miss Nick every day. I wish I had him back. It does change you. And I hate this term, the new normal.
Yes.
But
it's true.
It's true. And as much as I think that term gets used loosely in a lot of cases, because there are some things that happen in life that's how life is, and you just got to deal with it. But this is not what is supposed to happen in life, right? It is a new normal because it does change everything.
Yes.
Your entire life and the way you look at things.
Yes, it does. It changes you as a person. Some it can be bad or it can be good.
Right.
But I agree.
Well, I'm glad that you're doing better, and I've watched you and I keep an eye on you. You are my big little sis. You're significantly older than me and short.
I am short, but I am only 3 years older than you.
Yes. Well, you're shorter than our mother.
Although you look older than me.
I do. My beard is so white. It's bad.
Well, I get the benefit of dyeing my hair. So.
I've aged a lot less than you have, or a lot more than you have, I think. I don't look as young as you do. You do definitely have the gift of youth, I think, in your life, or I have the gift of wrinkles.
Well, thank you. I got wrinkles, so
yeah.
I just hide them.
We hide them real well.
Yeah.
But hey, damn it, we're good looking. People like us.
That's right. And people like us. Yeah, exactly.
Damn it. That's debatable. Some people would argue the opposite, but I don't care. Exactly. We have a good time. Anyway, well, sis, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I know this was not an easy conversation, but I'm glad you did it. I've always held off talking about Spencer on here until I had the chance to do this with you.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to take that away from you. And I knew at some point you would say, I'm ready and I can do this. And so I'm glad you did. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
No problem.
It was good talking
about
it.
I love you, sis. And we're going to go ahead and cut this one off. But again, to all my listeners out there, again, thank you guys for taking the time to listen to the podcast. It's a labor of love. I love doing it. So if you guys wouldn't mind, just, like the page, leave some comments, let me know if there's anything out there you want me to try to do and talk to different people. I try to mix it up, and I've got some interesting people coming up here in the next few weeks. This one will be released Tuesday. And then, again, please like it, leave some comments. And until next time, everybody, peace.